Welcome back to Baron's New Vegas Gun Guide. And I know you might not believe it, but we have finished up with the energy weapons that you can find in just the Mojave Wasteland. But luckily there is the gun runners to once again supply us with something that extends this class of weapon for those with the caps to splash, the bars to smack, or the coins to stack. These weapons will encompass some of the most expensive items in the game mixed with some of the cheapest new ammo in the game. As this is the 4th episode of the Gunrunner's Arsenal Roundup, we are running thin of information about this merchant house. Although the weapons they are bringing this time are more hits of nostalgia and remembrance, but the price point is something that will bring a tear to your eye regardless. As an overview, we have the optimized ammo variants of the Electron Charge Pack and the Flamer Fuel, perfect to go with your new unique variant of the Gatling Laser and the Flamer. Sadly, there is not extra for the incinerators, which are much more frugal for your Flamer Fuel. And bringing up the rear is a classic Plasma Caster variant. This leaves the Tesla Cannon high and dry, as well as the incinerators. But 3 out of 5 is good enough. But there is also something that is lacking, and that is new weapon mods for these classes of weapons, and in fact, there is only one more ballistic weapon that has mods from the Gunrunner's arsenal. Though you shouldn't fret, as the Gunrunner's arsenal still has plenty to give going forward. Now, since all of our selections are big, we will start with the one that I am least impressed by, the unique Flamer Cleansing Flame, which also happens to be the cheapest. I am not partial to flamers as a rule, as they consume ammo far too quickly without much to show for it. In other Fallout games, the flamethrower could be far more efficient, and in Fallout 3 and 4 there is little use for it otherwise. But in Fallout New Vegas, where you have the heavy incinerator, the flamer is the not go-to for incendiaries. Now, following the design philosophy that marks a lot of the weapons in GRA, there is a give and take to this weapon. Starting at a relatively low price of 9,500 caps, given to Gloria Van Graff or the Vendatron, it is slightly south of triple a modified flamer's price. It does 1 less point of direct damage, but more DOT of 10 damage per second for 6 seconds. So 1 less damage for each flame that comes out, but 60 damage over time instead of 10. So if you use it in the shortest of bursts, you can make efficient use of the flamer, but it requires time, not always a resource you have. As for the other stats, it has a lower DPS of 115 since it only attacks 7 times instead of 8. It has a capacity of 100, which is in between the unmodded and modded values of 60 and 120 respectively, and in my mind a lower capacity is better with the high damage over time, so take it as you will. The durability saw an increase to 1,495, which means the cost can be preserved somewhat, but still double the price of 1.5 flamers it can replace. But there are also some stats that for some reason are changed, even though they are meaningless to the flamethrower. Its crit multiplier has dropped from 0.42 times to 0.1 times, but with the crit damage of 1, like the normal flamer, it's meaningless. The spread also tripled from 0.5 to 1.5, which might make it have a wider throw of flame, but it is also mostly meaningless. And then, like the AMR, the VATS cost rose to 55, but since one shot has the potential of 75 damage and it fires 3 shots, there is still a higher efficiency. The biggest and cruelest change is the weight. It is 7 units heavier at 22, meaning that even with heavyweight it is still greater than 10 units. All in all, the Cleansing Flame incentivizes playing frugal, but close. It is a waiting game when a flamethrower is a very quick disabling gout. It has its use, but it can only bring so much to shine to a weapon that is already on the weaker side. Now, next will be the Smitty Special. It's a weapon I like a little bit more than the Cleansing Flame, but it's still far from being good in my eyes. Now, it is a unique plasma caster, and probably a similar, if not the same weapon used by the Vault Dweller 120 years ago. Back then, when the Gunrunners were starting out, there was a man named Smitty that lived in the LA Boneyard. He was a chemical and mechanical wizard, capable of achieving feats mostly forgotten in this heyday of the NCR. As a reward for fixing some hydroponic farms, he took the Vault Dweller's plasma rifle, perhaps one of many, and turbocharged it. It fired faster, i.e. with less AP, and did amazing damage. Sadly, the damage part has been lost, but the fast fire rate is preserved. Now, for reasons of balance, this can be understood, but it also costs an eye-watering 20,000 caps to purchase this weapon from Gloria Van Graff or the Vendatron if she is dead. That is double the cost of a modified plasma caster. And for that cost, you get a fully automatic plasma caster that only deals 35 damage per shot. This is down 30 from the normal plasma caster's damage of 65, but it is functionally different. Firing 7 shots per second, a third of the whole mag, it does 1.2 more damage per second than a modified plasma caster. Now this isn't a multiplier or percentage. The Smitty special does 245 damage compared to the modified plasma caster's 243.8 damage per second. But not only that, it also has a lowered crit multiplier of 0.1 times instead of times 1. And it also only does that 35 damage instead of 65. The only few shining graces is VATS, where it fires 3 shots compared to the standard 1 for only 5 AP more at 30 AP. And it has a higher durability of 1095 compared to 395. But the spread is 1.3, almost double the standard 0.7, and there is no increased magazine capacity. While it fulfills the spirit of the old turbo plasma rifle, the reduced damage makes this 20 weight gun, in my mind, not worth it. The faster fire rate is definitely not worth the reduced accuracy, but the high amount of microfusion cells you can get mean that it can see a lot of use regardless if you buy it, as 35 damage is still good, but nothing compared to 65. Now, the final unique weapon we'll be talking about is the Sperle Word 9700, or 9700 Gatling Laser, which has the most changes. For 20,000 caps again, to Gloria Van Graff or the Vendatron, which is 8,000 more than the fully modded Gatling Laser, you get something that is similar. Doing 16 damage, which is 6 more than normal and 3 more than the modded one, and firing 33% slower at 20 shots per second instead of 30, there is more control, even with a lower DPS of 320 instead of 300 or 390. It has more control at a spread of 0.5 compared to 0.6. The lower rate of fire also doubles the crit multiplier from 0.02 to 0.04, but it reduces the burst in VATS to 8 instead of 12. All in all, this weapon is incentivizing being controlled, firing in shorter bursts, and doing more damage means that it does have the ability to punch through armor a little bit better. Now, the final 2 changes are also benefits, as the weight goes down to 15, which makes it better with heavyweight, and the strength requirement, which is one of the only weapons that has this, drops to 6 instead of 8. This makes the Sperle Wood 9700 much more friendly to a weaker courier. It also has a much nicer green color, or purple color with Eve, and can use perks to get an easy 19% crit chance per shot. I know I did speed through a lot of the Sperle Wood 9700, but all this benefits to it is better in terms of usability. There's not a lot of waste with it. The biggest loss to the weapon is that its durability is only 4,995 instead of 7,495 shots, which is sad. Now, as for the name, it is dedicated to Dr. Scott Sperle and Brian Word, who was a Relic entertainment designer, both of who died in vehicle accidents before New Vegas was released, and as such, this weapon does have a similar weight to that of the Smitty Special does. There is history with this gun, and someone thought it was important enough to give it the name. In my mind, it is a good send-off, in fact, that they will be immortalized in one of the best Fallout games, but it's food for thought. And coming off the heels of that, we have the final piece of this roundup, the other versions of the optimized ammo. They have the same effect regardless of the size or type, and are a straight upgrade over Overcharge, but require the Vigilant Recycler perk to make, which requires a Science of 70. It requires the same 3 standard ammo to make 2 optimized cells just like Overcharge, but it does 30% more damage instead of 25%. It also drops the enemy DT by 5, same as the Overcharge, but it only decreases wear by an extra 10%. These really are the perfect cell, except that they can't be used to make money, such as the Overcharge, as they have the same price as the standard cell. And a note for those in hardcore, they only weigh 60% of the normal weight, which easily makes them the preferred cell for the Gatling laser. This is big because Flamer Fuel can also be optimized if you're using the Cleansing Flame or the Incinerators. And this makes it the only Flamer Fuel that does more damage and has DT penetration. This is the biggest boon for people using the Heavy Incinerator or the Cleansing Flame, as there's now much less that can resist their flames, although it only benefits the direct damage. Now, as for the Electron Charge packs, the cheap price of them means you can feed your big guns with the RCW and Gatling laser, especially the Sperle Wood 9700, getting a lot out of it. The Tesla cannon gets the most raw damage from the new ammo, but max charge is probably the way to go with it anyway. Now, the Vigilant Recycler perk is great for energy weapon users, giving them access to these optimized ammo, and it also increases the efficiency of drained ammo conversions, going from 4-to-1 to 3-to-1. Now, with these weapons burning through ammo fast, the Vigilant Recycler lets you recapture more drained ammo from each magazine, and that means your stock stays up for longer. This is especially true of the Flamer. In total, there is less on offer with the heavy weapons, but the Vigilant Recycler perk gives new life to flame weapons, and the Sperle Wood is not the most exciting version of the Gatling laser, but it is more frugal, and that describes 3 of the 4 features on this section. Besides the Smitty special, all of these things make for a more frugal energy weapon experience and trade time for damage. The Smitty special stands out like the Bozar. It is a hard sell over the base weapons, trading damage for speed. The Bozar fell short of the minigun, the Gatling laser, and even the LMG, just as the Smitty special's lack of accuracy make it hard to use above all other plasma weapons. The thing is, both of these weapons were kings of the games that they were in. But for those that have lots of caps, these weapons can provide an avenue for expansion. Although for the humble arsonist, there is still a small nugget to be gained with getting the Gunrunner's arsenal.